I answered the phone at exactly 9:30 p.m., as I had every night for the past 6 months. My son Ethan asked his usual question, "Mom, are you alone tonight?" For the first time ever, I lied. I told him yes, I was alone. But my friend Dorothy was sitting right across from me at the kitchen table. Ethan hung up immediately, as he always does when I say yes. 20 minutes later, I heard someone trying to break into my back door. Dorothy called 911. That lie saved my life. I sat at my kitchen table with 2 police officers, my hands still shaking as I gave my statement about the attempted break-in. Officer Martinez, a woman maybe in her 40s with kind eyes, took notes while her partner inspected the back door. The pry marks were there, clear as day, gouged into the wood around the lock. But no suspect had been found. No one lurking in the yard. No footprints in the flower beds. Just evidence that someone had tried to get inside. "Are you sure you don't know anyone who might want to hurt you?" the officer asked. "Any arguments with neighbors? Anyone angry at you?" I shook my head, but my mind was spinning in circles I couldn't quite articulate. "Nothing is missing," I told them. "I don't have enemies. I'm just a 63-year-old widow living alone." Dorothy sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder. She'd been the one to call 911 when we heard the noise at the back door, the one who'd kept me from opening it to see what was happening. The officers finished their report, promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood, and left with assurances that felt hollow. "Be careful," Officer Martinez said at the door. "Keep your phone close. Call us if anything else happens." After they left, Dorothy made us both tea neither of us wanted. "Harper," she said carefully, "what's really going on? You've seemed off for months, ever since Paul died. Paul, my husband of 42 years. He died suddenly 6 months ago of a heart attack at age 67. One morning he was reading the newspaper at this very table, and by that afternoon he was gone. The grief had been crushing, suffocating, a weight on my chest that never quite lifted. We'd built a good life together. He'd been a civil engineer. I'd taught 3rd grade for 35 years before retiring. We owned our 3-bedroom house here in suburban Ohio outright. Had savings, retirement accounts, Paul's life insurance policy. Our 2 children were grown and settled. Ethan was 38, worked in finance in another city. Grace was 35, married with twin boys, living 2 hours away. The phone calls started a week after the funeral. I told Dorothy this as we sat in my kitchen, the tea cooling between us. Ethan began calling every single night at 9:30. "Just checking on you, Mom," he'd say. "Are you alone?" At first I thought it was sweet, protective. He was making sure I wasn't drowning in loneliness, making sure I was safe. If I said no, if a friend was visiting or Grace had stopped by, he'd ask who it was. How long were they staying? When were they leaving? His voice would get tense, almost agitated. If I said yes, I was alone, he'd hang up within seconds. Sometimes without even saying goodbye. "It's been 6 months of this," I told Dorothy. Same time every night. Same question. Never a real conversation. Never asking how I'm feeling or what I did that day. Just that one question. Dorothy frowned into her mug. "That's strange, Harper. That's not normal checking in. That's something else." "I know," I whispered. "That's why I lied tonight. You were here, sitting right where you are now." When he called, I had this impulse. I wanted to see what would happen if I said I was alone when I wasn't. He hung up like always, and then 20 minutes later, someone tried to break in. The words hung in the air between us. Dorothy's face went pale. "You don't think—" she started, then stopped. "Harper, you're not suggesting Ethan would hurt you?" I don't know what I'm suggesting. But after she left and I was truly alone, I walked through my house with new eyes, really looked at things. The framed photos in the living room were slightly crooked, as if someone had moved them and put them back carelessly. My desk drawer in the study didn't close properly anymore, something jamming it that hadn't been there before. Items throughout the house were in different places than I remembered, small things. A vase moved from one end of the mantel to the other, books on shelves in different order. My address book not quite where I always kept it. I went into my bathroom, hands trembling, and examined my prescription bottles. Blood pressure medication. The pills looked different than I remembered. Some were slightly different shades of white. Some seemed larger. I'd been feeling so foggy lately, confused and dizzy, forgetting things. I'd assumed it was grief, the trauma of losing Paul, the stress of living alone. But what if it wasn't? I picked up the phone and called my pharmacy. The 24-hour line connected me to a pharmacist. I gave him my name and prescription number. Yes, he confirmed, checking his system. That prescription was filled 3 weeks ago. 30 pills, white, round, 10 milligrams. He described them precisely. The pills in my bottle didn't match his description. I stood in my bathroom, staring at those pills, and felt the first real stab of terror. Someone had been in my house, had been coming into my house, switching my medications, moving my things, going through my belongings. The phone calls weren't protective, they were surveillance. Ethan was asking if I was alone, so he'd know when it was safe to come inside. I sank onto the edge of my bathtub, the pill bottle clutched in my shaking hand. My phone would ring again tomorrow night at 9:30. It would ring every night, as it had for 6 months, and I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room chair, lights on, staring at my phone. When morning came, I decided to confront this head on. I called Ethan. It rang 5 times, then went to voicemail. His professional greeting, friendly and warm. "Hey, this is Ethan. Leave a message." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, it's Mom. We need to talk about your nightly calls, and about someone being in my house. Call me back." He called within an hour. His voice was full of concern, the gentle tone you use with someone fragile. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I call because I worry about you. You're alone in that big house. What do you mean someone's been inside?" I told him everything. The attempted break-in, the items moved, the pills that didn't match my prescription. My voice got stronger as I spoke, more certain. "Someone has been coming into my house, Ethan, and the timing matches your calls. Every time I tell you I'm alone, something happens." There was a pause. Then his response came, measured and careful. "Mom, are you sure about this? You've been under so much stress. Losing Dad, it's been terrible for all of us. Grief can do strange things to our minds. Maybe you moved those things and forgot. Are you sleeping okay? Have you been eating properly?" "I'm not confused," I said firmly. "Something is wrong here. Why do you call every single night at the exact same time? Why do you always ask if I'm alone? Why do you hang up so quickly?" Another pause. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, become more serious, more concerned in a different way. "Mom, I'm getting really worried about you. You're talking about break-ins that the police found no evidence of. Pills that look different but you have no proof they've been changed. Things being moved that you can't prove anyone else moved. This sounds like paranoia. This sounds like you might need help." "I'm not paranoid," I said, hearing the desperation creeping into my voice. "I know what I see. I know something is wrong." Okay, Mom. Okay, I hear you. But listen, I think you should see someone. A doctor. Maybe Dr. Brennan? Just to talk things through. Can you do that for me? I don't need a doctor. I need you to answer my questions. Why the calls, Ethan? What's really going on? I'm trying to help you, Mom. That's what's going on. I love you. I'm worried about you. And I think I need to call Grace. We should talk about this as a family. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding my phone, feeling the conversation slip away from me. Somehow, he'd turned it around, made me sound unstable, made my legitimate concerns sound like symptoms. That evening, Grace called. Harper heard it in her daughter's voice immediately, that careful patience. Mom, Ethan told me you're having some concerns. He said, you think someone is breaking into the house? That your medications are wrong? Grace, I started, but she kept talking. I know it's been really hard since Dad died. Living alone in that house, all those memories. It's a lot to handle. Maybe Ethan is right. Maybe you should see Dr. Brennan, just to talk. Just to make sure you're okay. I tried to explain. Laid out the pattern of calls, the evidence I'd found, the feeling that something was deeply wrong. But as the words came out of my mouth, I could hear how they sounded. Paranoid, confused. Exactly what Ethan had said. Mom, Grace said gently, we love you. We want to help. But we need you to work with us. Ethan and I are coming over tomorrow. We need to talk. All of us together. Okay? After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room. My children thought I was losing my mind. They'd already talked to each other, already coordinated, already decided I was the problem. I tried calling Dorothy, but she was traveling to see her daughter, wouldn't be back for a week. I felt utterly, completely alone. At 9:30, the phone rang. Ethan's nightly call. I answered, anger replacing fear. No, I snapped. I'm not alone. The police are here. It was a lie. I was completely alone in my house. But I wanted to see his reaction. There was a long pause. Why are the police there, Mom? His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Sharp, almost dangerous. Because of the break-in. They're investigating. I kept my voice steady, committed to the lie. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, Mom, we'll talk tomorrow. He hung up. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding, and slowly the realization crept over me. I'd just made everything worse. I'd lied about the police being there. When Ethan and Grace came tomorrow and found out I'd lied, it would confirm everything they already believed, that I was confused, paranoid, unstable, not thinking clearly. I'd just given them exactly the ammunition they needed. Grace and Ethan arrived together the next morning, pulling up in Ethan's car. They came bearing coffee and pastries, both of them smiling. We're here to help, Mom, Grace said, kissing my cheek. We love you. We settled in the living room, the same room where I'd sat for 42 years with Paul, where we'd raised our children, celebrated holidays, built our life. Now it felt like foreign territory, like I was the outsider in my own home. Ethan spoke first, his voice calm and measured. Mom, we're concerned. Grace and I have been talking and we think you're going through something difficult. It's understandable. Losing Dad was traumatic for all of us. But some of the things you've been saying worry us. He ticked them off on his fingers. You think someone is breaking into your house, even though the police found minimal evidence. You think your medications have been tampered with, but you have no proof. You told me last night that police were here investigating, but when I called the station this morning to follow up, they had no record of anyone being here last night. My stomach dropped. He'd checked. Of course he'd checked. Mom, you lied. Grace said softly. Why would you lie about something like that? I tried to defend myself, tried to show them the evidence. I took them to the back door, pointed out the pry marks. They looked, but Ethan pointed out the marks could be old, from any time. Could have been there for years. I brought out the medication bottles, but without the original pills to compare them to, there was no proof anything had been switched. I tried to explain the pattern of the calls, but Ethan just looked hurt. Mom, I call because I love you, because I worry about you being alone. Are you saying that's wrong? Are you saying I shouldn't care about my own mother? Grace touched my arm. Mom, we need to talk about something. About this house. It's too much for you. All these rooms, the yard, the upkeep, and everywhere you look, there are memories of Dad. Maybe it's time to think about something smaller, something more manageable. There are really nice senior communities. You could meet people, have activities, not be so isolated. Absolutely not. I shook my head firmly. I'm 63 years old, not 90. I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home. This is my house. I'm not selling. They exchanged a glance. That look parents give each other over a child's head. Then Grace continued, her voice full of gentle concern. We worry about you every day, Mom. What if something happens and no one is here? What if you fall? What if there's an emergency? Don't you think Dad would want you to be safe? They kept at it, both of them, tag-teaming me with love and concern, never raising their voices, never being cruel, just reasonable, caring children worried about their mother. And under the weight of their worry, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe grief had made me paranoid. Maybe I did move those things and forgot. The fog in my head made it hard to think clearly, hard to organize my thoughts. Then Ethan pulled out a manila folder. Mom, I need to show you something. I've been documenting my concerns because I wanted to have a record in case we needed to get you help. He spread papers across my coffee table. Emails. From my email account. Sent to Ethan over the past 2 months. I leaned forward, reading them with growing horror. Rambling messages about neighbors watching me through windows, about feeling followed at the grocery store, about thinking someone was stealing my jewelry. The emails were disjointed, paranoid, not like my writing at all. I don't remember writing these, I whispered. That's part of what worries us, Grace said. And Mom, Dr. Brennan called me. You missed your last 2 appointments. When his office called to reschedule, you apparently got angry and yelled at them, then hung up. I had no memory of missing appointments, no memory of yelling at anyone. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to think through the fog. Ethan pulled out more papers, medical records from my last physical 2 months ago. I read the doctor's notes. Patient shows signs of memory loss and confusion. Reports feeling disoriented. Possible early cognitive decline. Recommend follow-up neurological evaluation. I stared at the words, at the evidence spread before me, at my children's concerned faces, felt the fog in my mind, the gaps in my memory, the confusion I'd been living with. Maybe they were right. Maybe something really was wrong with me. Maybe I was losing my grip on reality and didn't even know it. We just want you to be evaluated, Ethan said gently. If everything checks out fine, then we'll all feel better. We'll know you're okay. And if something is wrong, we can help you. Get you the treatment you need. We're not trying to hurt you, Mom. We're trying to protect you. I was so tired, so confused, so worn down by doubt. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay, I'll see Dr. Brennan. I'll do the evaluation. They both relaxed, smiling with relief. That's great, Mom. That's the right choice. We're so proud of you. After they left, I sat alone in my living room, My house felt different now. Unsafe, unfamiliar. I went to my computer and checked my email, found all those messages in my sent folder. Messages I had no memory of writing. The terror that crept through me was worse than anything I'd felt before. What if they were right? What if I really was losing my mind? What if everything I thought was happening wasn't real at all? 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Brennan's office. He was younger than me, maybe 50, with the kind of professional kindness that felt rehearsed. He asked questions about my sleep patterns, my appetite, my mood. Each question felt loaded, designed to catch me in some admission of incompetence. Have you been forgetting things, Harper? Misplacing items? Feeling confused about what day it is? I tried to answer honestly, but every truth sounded like a symptom. Yes, I'd been forgetting things. Yes, I felt confused sometimes. Yes, I'd been under stress. He ordered tests, cognitive assessments, blood work, brain scans. Just to rule things out, he said with that practiced smile. Better safe than sorry. I went through the motions, feeling like I was being processed through a system designed to prove I was broken. The cognitive tests were hard. Numbers and patterns and word recalls that seemed impossible through the fog in my head. I could feel myself failing, see it in the tester's neutral expression. Dr. Brennan prescribed new medications for anxiety and sleep. You've been through tremendous trauma, Harper. Your husband's death, the stress of living alone. These will help clear your head, help you rest. I took the prescription, but didn't fill it right away. Something felt wrong about adding more pills when I suspected the pills I was already taking had been tampered with. Ethan's calls intensified. Now he was calling multiple times a day, not just at night. Morning check-ins, lunchtime calls, the evening 9:30 call, and throughout the day, text messages. Did you take your medication, Mom? Did you eat breakfast? Are you feeling okay today? The surveillance had increased, not decreased. I felt watched, constantly, monitored, controlled. I started doing my own research, sitting at my computer late at night. Looked up elder financial abuse. Read articles about adult children who steal from aging parents. Guardianship proceedings used to take control of assets. Gaslighting techniques. Everything I read matched what was happening to me, but I had no proof, and the fog in my head made it hard to organize my thoughts, hard to build a case. On a Tuesday morning, I went to my bank. The teller was a young woman I'd known for years. When I asked to review my accounts, she seemed nervous, kept glancing toward the manager's office. Finally, the manager came out. "Mrs. Harper, we need to talk." He led me to his office, closed the door. "Mrs. Harper, I wanted to let you know that your son Ethan was added as a joint account holder 3 weeks ago. You came in with him and signed the paperwork. I just wanted to make sure everything was in order." My blood went cold. I never came in here with Ethan. I never signed any paperwork. The manager's face shifted, became uncomfortable. He pulled up files on his computer, turned the screen to show me. There was my signature on account modification forms, dated 3 weeks ago. My name, my signature, adding Ethan as joint holder to my checking and savings accounts. I had no memory of it, none. I drove directly to the county recorder's office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, checked my house deed. The clerk helped me pull the records. 3 weeks ago, the same time as the bank paperwork, Ethan had been added to my house deed, joint ownership. There was my signature on the forms. I stood in that government office, surrounded by files and records, and felt my world tilting. Had I signed these things? Had I been so foggy, so confused, that I'd agreed to all this and forgotten? Or was something else happening? Something darker? I called Ethan from my car, demanded answers. Why are you on my bank accounts? Why are you on my house deed? What's going on? His voice came back calm, almost patronizing. Mom, we did all that together, remember? We went to the bank, then to the lawyer's office. You said you wanted to get your affairs in order. You wanted to make sure if something happened to you, everything would be taken care of. This is just normal estate planning. Don't you remember? I wanted to scream. No, I don't remember. I don't remember any of it. That's what worries me, Mom. That's exactly what worries me. 2 days later, a man in a suit knocked on my door. I opened it to find myself being served legal papers. A court officer, professional and impersonal. I stood in my doorway, reading the petition. Ethan had filed for emergency guardianship and conservatorship. The petition claimed I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs, showed evidence of severe cognitive decline, paranoia, inability to care for myself safely, included statements from Dr. Brennan, included copies of those emails, included documentation of missed medications, forgotten appointments, erratic behavior. I had 10 days before a court hearing. If Ethan won, he would have complete legal control over my life, my finances, my medical care, my housing decisions, everything. I called lawyers, trying to find someone to represent me. But I could hear myself on the phone, how I sounded, confused, rambling, paranoid. The evidence against me was compelling. One lawyer agreed to take my case but was honest about the odds. Mrs. Harper, I'll be straight with you. Guardianship cases are hard to fight. The system is designed to protect vulnerable seniors. And based on the documentation your son has provided, you appear to be a vulnerable senior who needs protection. But I don't, I insisted. He's doing this on purpose. He's making me seem incompetent so he can take control of my money. The lawyer sighed. That may be true, but proving it is another matter. Do you have evidence? Proof that he's manipulated you? Or falsified documents? I had nothing concrete. Just suspicions and missing memories and a feeling of being trapped. That night, I didn't answer Ethan's 9:30 call. I was too upset, too overwhelmed. I let it ring. An hour later, police knocked on my door. Ethan had called for a welfare check. Said his mother wasn't answering her phone and he was worried she'd fallen or hurt herself. The officers were kind but thorough. Looked around my house. Asked if I was okay. Filed a report. I realized, standing there with those officers, that even this would be used against me. Another entry in the documentation. Patient requires welfare checks. Doesn't answer phone when family calls. Family members express ongoing concern for safety. After they left, I sat surrounded by legal papers I barely understood through the fog in my head. I was trapped in a system being used to steal my life, and I had absolutely no idea how to fight back. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for 3 days before the guardianship hearing. Court ordered. I met with Dr. Patricia Whitmore in her office downtown. The room was deliberately calming, soft colors and comfortable chairs, but I felt like I was walking into an ambush. She asked questions for 2 hours. About my marriage, my grief, my daily life, about the concerns I'd raised about break-ins and medications. Have you been feeling paranoid, Harper? Do you sometimes feel people are out to get you? Do you experience confusion about what's real? I tried to answer carefully, tried to explain without sounding crazy, but every explanation made me sound more unhinged. Yes, I thought someone had been in my house. Yes, I believed my medications had been changed. Yes, I felt my son's calls were suspicious rather than caring. Hearing it all laid out in that quiet office, it sounded insane. Dr. Whitmore asked to see the medications I claimed had been tampered with. I'd brought the bottles with me. She examined them carefully, compared them to the prescription information. These appear to be the correct medications, Harper. The right manufacturer, the right dosage. What made you think they'd been changed? They looked different before, I said weakly. The colors weren't quite right. She made a note. Sometimes our perceptions can be affected by stress and grief. Our minds can play tricks on us. The evaluation results came back 2 days later. My lawyer called to read them to me. Patient shows signs of paranoid ideation, possible early onset dementia, inability to accurately assess reality. Exhibits confusion, memory loss, and delusional thinking. Recommend patient not live independently. Recommend supervised care environment. I sat on my couch, listening to those words, feeling my world collapse. This was it. The documentation that would seal my fate. A court-appointed psychiatrist saying I couldn't be trusted with my own life. That night, in desperation, I went through my house and collected every pill bottle, every prescription, every over-the-counter medication, everything. I flushed it all down the toilet. If the medications were making me foggy, if they were part of what was making me seem incompetent, I wanted them out of my system. Over the next 3 days, something shifted. The fog in my head began to lift. Slowly, like morning mist burning off a lake, my thinking became sharper, my memories clearer. I realized the medications had been making me worse, not better, making me confused and disoriented, making me seem exactly as unstable as Ethan needed me to seem. But it was too late. The court date was tomorrow. The evaluation was complete. The damage was done. Grace came to visit on the afternoon before the hearing, ostensibly to help me prepare, to make sure I knew what to expect. But I caught her measuring the living room, taking photos of furniture with her phone. When I confronted her, she had the grace to look embarrassed. "Mom, we're just trying to be prepared. If the court decides you need care, we'll need to sell the house to pay for it. Ethan and I have been talking about how to handle everything. The real estate market is good right now. We could probably get $400,000 for this place. $400,000. I stared at my daughter. This isn't about caring for me, is it? This is about money. She bit her lip, then seemed to make a decision. Honesty, or maybe cruelty. Mom, it's not that we don't love you, but Ethan has 3 kids in college. Do you know what tuition costs these days? And I've got medical bills from the twins' premature birth that insurance didn't cover. We're not rich people, and you're sitting on all this wealth you don't even need. This house, Dad's life insurance, your retirement accounts, it's nearly $1 million total. You don't need all that just to live in a nursing home." "A nursing home," I repeated. "That's what you're planning. Not assisted living, not a nice senior community. A nursing home. Well, given your psychiatric evaluation, that's probably what the court will recommend." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Saw the greed there, the calculation. They'd been planning this since Paul died. Every step coordinated. The nightly surveillance calls, the medication tampering, the gaslighting, the evidence building. All of it designed to make me seem incompetent so they could take control of everything Paul and I had spent a lifetime building. The next morning, 2 days before the hearing, Ethan filed an emergency motion. My lawyer called to tell me. He claims you're in immediate danger, that you've stopped taking your medications, that you're becoming increasingly erratic. He's asking for an emergency temporary guardianship. Immediate intervention. The judge granted it. That afternoon, police and social workers arrived at my door with a court order. I was being taken for involuntary psychiatric evaluation, 72-hour hold. I had no choice, no say. I could go voluntarily, or they would take me by force. I went voluntarily, tried to maintain some dignity. They took me to a psychiatric facility 20 minutes away, a locked unit. They processed me like a criminal, took my purse, my phone, my jewelry, put me in a hospital gown, gave me medications I didn't want, medications that made the fog return, evaluated me with doctors I didn't know, treated me like someone who couldn't be trusted with basic decisions. I was in a room with another woman who rocked constantly and muttered to herself. The hallways smelled like disinfectant and despair. Nurses checked on me every 15 minutes. I had no privacy, no autonomy, no rights. On my second day there, I was allowed a monitored phone call. I called Ethan because he was listed as my emergency contact. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, how are you feeling? Are you getting the help you need?" And then he asked it. That same question he'd asked every night for 6 months. "Mom, are you alone right now? Even here, even now?" In a locked psychiatric unit where I'd been involuntarily committed. He was still asking, still checking, still monitoring. And suddenly, with perfect clarity, I understood. He wasn't asking if I was safe. He was asking if I could be controlled, if there were witnesses, if he had complete power over me. The question had never been about care. It had always been about control and opportunity. "I'm never alone anymore," I said quietly. "There are always people watching me now. Isn't that what you wanted?" I hung up before he could respond. That night, I convinced a nurse I needed to use the bathroom. The one in my room was broken. She'd have to take me down the hall. We walked past the day room, past other patients. The bathroom had a small window, ground floor. I'd noticed it during the tour when I'd first arrived. Old building, window that opened. I locked the bathroom door. The nurse knocked. "Mrs. Harper, are you okay in there?" "I'm fine," I called. "Just a minute." I climbed onto the toilet, pushed the window open. It was small, but I'm not a large woman. I'd lost weight since Paul died. I squeezed through, dropped into the bushes below, landed hard, felt something twist in my ankle, but I got up and ran. I was 63 years old, in hospital clothes, barefoot, with no phone and no money, but I was free, and I was not going back. I made it 3 blocks before I had to stop, hiding behind a dumpster outside a convenience store, my ankle throbbing. I had nothing. No ID, no credit cards, no way to prove who I was. They'd taken everything. And when the facility realized I was gone, they'd call the police. I'd be a missing, vulnerable adult, confused elderly woman, possibly dangerous to herself. They'd be looking for me everywhere, but my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months, and I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would not let Ethan win. I would not let them steal my life. I would fight back with everything I had left. I walked 4 miles to Dorothy's house. Every step on my injured ankle was agony, but I kept moving. It was nearly midnight when I finally reached her neighborhood. I'd cut through backyards, hidden behind garages when I saw police cars, moved like a fugitive. Because that's what I was now, a missing patient from a psychiatric hold. Dorothy answered her door in her bathrobe, her face cycling through shock and confusion and concern when she saw me on her doorstep in hospital clothes, barefoot and dirty. "Harper, oh my God, what happened to you?" I collapsed into her house, told her everything while she wrapped my ankle and got me clean clothes. Dorothy listened without interruption, her face getting harder with each detail. When I finished, she grabbed my hand. I knew something was wrong. I tried calling you for days, but your phone was disconnected. And when I called Ethan to check on you, he said you were getting treatment, said you were safe and I shouldn't worry. He lied to my face. We have to be smart about this, Dorothy said. You're officially a missing person now. They'll be looking for you. We probably have until morning before they realize you came here, but not much longer. We need proof of what Ethan's done. Real proof. And we need it fast. She helped me to her computer. Together, we accessed my phone records online using her computer and my account passwords. We printed everything. 6 months of call logs, every single night at 9:30 p.m. Not one missed night. Not one variation in time. The pattern was undeniable, documented, time-stamped by the phone company. Dorothy started doing research while I rested my ankle. She found articles about elder financial abuse, news stories about cases just like mine, children who'd used guardianship laws to steal from parents. She found a legal aid organization that specialized in elder abuse cases. At 7 in the morning, Dorothy drove me across town to meet with an attorney named Susan Walsh. Susan worked with a legal aid society, took cases pro bono for seniors who couldn't afford help. She was maybe 40, sharp-eyed, with an air of someone who'd seen every dirty trick in the book. She listened to my story, examined the phone records, looked at the timeline I'd written out, reviewed the medical records and the guardianship petition. She saw it immediately. "This is textbook elder financial abuse," she said. "Your son has orchestrated a sophisticated scheme to gain control of your assets, but proving it in court will be difficult. You're currently under emergency guardianship. You fled a psychiatric hold. The system sees you as an unstable person who needs protection." "What do we need?" I asked. "What proof would make them believe me?" Susan ticked off items on her fingers. Proof the medications were tampered with. You flushed them, so that's gone. Proof that Ethan was the one accessing your house without permission. You have no physical evidence. Proof the emails were forged or sent under coercion. That's technically difficult to prove. Proof that the signatures on legal documents were obtained fraudulently. You don't remember signing them, but that could be memory loss. I felt despair settling over me again. "So there's nothing we can do?" I didn't say that. Susan leaned forward. "We need something concrete, something undeniable. Think, Harper, is there any evidence we might have missed?" I thought back over everything. The phone calls were documented. The pattern was clear. But that wasn't enough. Then something occurred to me. "Security cameras," I said. "Some of my neighbors have doorbell cameras, those cameras that record everything. If Ethan was coming to my house late at night, maybe one of them caught him." Dorothy grabbed her phone. "Let's start calling." We spent the next 3 hours calling my neighbors. Most were sympathetic but hadn't saved footage going back months. But Mrs. Patterson, 3 houses down from mine, was different. She was 75 and suspicious of everything. Kept 6 months of footage from her cameras because you never know when you might need it. Dorothy drove me to Mrs. Patterson's house. We couldn't risk going to my own neighborhood where police might be looking for me, so Mrs. Patterson brought her laptop to meet us at a coffee shop halfway across town. "Let me see what I've got," she said, pulling up her security system. Her doorbell camera had a wide-angle view. It caught part of my driveway and front walk. She started scrolling through footage. "There," I said, pointing. "That's Ethan's car." Mrs. Patterson clicked on the video. The timestamp showed 11 p.m. on a night 3 months ago. Ethan getting out of his car, walking up my front walk. He had a key, let himself in. Stayed for 25 minutes. Left, carrying a folder. We kept searching. Found 4 more instances over the past 6 months. All late at night. All after the 9:30 phone calls. all times when I'd told him I was alone and he'd hung up quickly. There he was on camera, time-stamped and dated. Undeniable proof he'd been accessing my house without my knowledge. But we needed more. Susan had been clear. We needed to prove the medications were tampered with. Dorothy suddenly sat up straight. "Harper, did you throw away the pills?" I flushed them down the toilet. "No, before that. The ones you first suspected were wrong. Did you throw away the entire bottle? Or just some pills?" I thought back. I'd replaced them with pills from a new prescription, thrown the suspicious ones in the bathroom trash. But I hadn't emptied that trash. I never emptied the trash. Paul always did that. And after he died, I just let things pile up. The bag might still be there. "We need to get into your house," Dorothy said. "That's breaking and entering," Susan warned. "I have a key," Dorothy said. "Harper gave me 1 year ago for emergencies. This qualifies." That night, Dorothy went to my house. She parked a block away, walked carefully through the dark. My house had been empty since I'd been taken away. Ethan hadn't moved my things out yet. She let herself in, went to my bathroom, found the trash can. The bag was still there. She carefully bagged the suspicious pills, photographed everything, and left. We took the pills to a pharmacist friend of Susan's. He examined them, compared them to what my prescription should have been. "These aren't your heart medication," he told us. "These are mild sedatives, mixed with something that can cause confusion and memory problems. Not enough to seriously harm you, but enough to make you foggy, to make you seem confused and forgetful." Finally, we had proof. Susan spent the next day building our case. She compiled everything. The phone records showing the 6-month pattern. The security footage showing Ethan entering my house without permission at night. The tampered medications analyzed by the pharmacist. The timeline of my mental decline matching exactly when Ethan started controlling my access to doctors and medications. The financial records showing the suspicious timing of when Ethan was added to my accounts and deed. And then Susan found something else. She subpoenaed my bank records more thoroughly. Ethan had already withdrawn $50,000 from my accounts, made plans to list my house for sale, had contacted real estate agents, started moving other assets into accounts with his name on them. He wasn't waiting for the guardianship hearing. He was already treating my money as his own. This showed intent. Showed this wasn't about my care but about stealing my assets. Susan filed emergency motions with the court to dissolve the emergency guardianship, to freeze all my assets so Ethan couldn't take more, to investigate Ethan for elder abuse and financial exploitation, to allow me to present evidence before the original guardianship hearing. The risk was huge. If this didn't work, I'd be found and returned to the psychiatric facility. Ethan would have time to cover his tracks. This was our one shot, our only chance. The hearing was scheduled for the next morning. Susan laid out my clothes, helped me prepare what to say. Dorothy held my hand and promised she'd be there in the courtroom. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow I would face my son in court, would present evidence that he'd tried to steal my life, would fight for my freedom, my assets, my dignity. I was terrified, but I was also clear-headed for the first time in months, and I was ready to fight. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the seal of Ohio behind the judge's bench. I sat at a table with Susan Walsh, while Ethan sat 20 feet away with his lawyer. He looked shocked to see me, hadn't expected me to surface with legal representation, hadn't expected me to fight back. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Judith Morrison. She looked at me over her reading glasses with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mrs. Harper, you fled a psychiatric facility 2 days ago." You're currently under an emergency guardianship order. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? Susan stood up. Your Honor, if you'll allow us to present our evidence, I believe you'll understand exactly why Mrs. Harper felt she had to flee. What we're about to show you is a systematic case of elder financial abuse and exploitation. For the next hour, Susan methodically presented everything. She started with the phone records. 6 months of nightly calls at exactly 9:30 p.m. Not one variation. She had the records blown up on poster boards, every call highlighted. This isn't a concerned son checking on his mother, Susan said. This is surveillance, establishing a pattern to know when it's safe to access her home. Then the security footage. Susan played the videos on a laptop connected to a screen. There was Ethan, time-stamped and dated, entering my house late at night. 4 separate instances. Always within an hour of the 9:30 phone call. Always on nights when I'd said I was alone. Ethan's lawyer tried to object. Mr. Brennan was listed on the deed as joint owner. He had every right to enter the property. Susan cut him off. He was added to that deed 3 weeks before this footage, and look at what he's doing. She zoomed in on one video. He's not checking on his mother's welfare. He's carrying out files, searching through her belongings. This is theft, not concern. Then, Susan presented the medications. Brought in the pharmacist as an expert witness. He testified that the pills found in my bathroom were not the medication I'd been prescribed. They were sedatives and compounds that cause confusion. Mrs. Harper's cognitive decline matches exactly the timeline of when these medications were introduced. Within 3 days of stopping all medications, her clarity returned completely. Susan showed the timeline, mapped out how my supposed decline began, exactly when Ethan started making his nightly calls. How every symptom of incompetence appeared after Ethan gained access to my house. How the emails were sent during times when Ethan had been documented as being in my home. Your Honor, Susan said. Mr. Brennan systematically drugged his mother to make her appear incompetent. He documented this false incompetence. He used it to gain access to her assets. He added himself to her bank accounts and property deed. And when she started to realize what was happening, he had her involuntarily committed to keep her from fighting back. She presented the financial evidence. The $50,000 already withdrawn. The real estate agents Ethan had contacted. The plans to sell my house while I was institutionalized. Mr. Communiate. Brennan wasn't waiting for guardianship to be granted, Susan said. He was already stealing. This shows clear intent to exploit a vulnerable adult for financial gain. Ethan's lawyer tried to defend him. Said the phone calls were legitimate concern. Said Ethan was on the accounts for estate planning purposes. Said the withdrawals were to pay for my care. But Susan tore each argument apart with documentation and timestamps. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand, sworn in, and told my story. I kept my voice steady, my thoughts organized. Explained how the fog lifted when I stopped taking the medications. Described the night I lied about being alone and someone tried to break in. Talked about how my own children had gaslit me into doubting my sanity. My son wasn't calling to check if I was safe, I said, looking directly at the judge. He was calling to check if it was safe for him. Every time I said I was alone, he knew he could access my house, tamper with my medications, steal my documents, build his case against me. The question was never about my well-being. It was about control and opportunity. I described the night Dorothy was visiting, how I'd lied on impulse and said I was alone, how Ethan hung up immediately, as always, how 20 minutes later someone tried to break into my back door but fled when Dorothy called 911. That lie saved my life, I said, because it interrupted the pattern. It made him think I was alone when I wasn't, and it made me see the truth about what was happening. The judge asked Ethan's lawyer if he wanted to cross-examine me. He tried, asked about my memory problems, my missed appointments, my erratic behavior. But Susan objected at every turn, showing that each instance of forgetfulness or confusion corresponded with times when Ethan had access to my medications. Then Grace was called to testify. She looked terrible, pale and nervous. Under oath, she admitted that she and Ethan had discussed splitting the proceeds from selling my house, admitted they'd calculated the value of all my assets, admitted Ethan told her I'd need to be in a nursing home and they'd divide everything else. She started crying on the stand. "I didn't know it would go this far," she sobbed. "I didn't know he was drugging her. I just thought she was declining and we were helping." The judge's expression grew harder with each minute of testimony. When all the evidence was presented, she called for a recess, came back an hour later with her ruling. "I'm dissolving the emergency guardianship effective immediately," Judge Morrison said. "Mrs. Harper has presented compelling evidence of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and fraud. I'm ordering a full investigation by Adult Protective Services and referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges." She looked at Ethan with disgust. "Mr. Brennan, you're ordered to return every penny you've withdrawn from your mother's accounts. The deed changes are hereby nullified. You're removed from all financial accounts and property titles, and I'm granting an immediate restraining order. You are to have no contact with your mother. If you violate this order, you will be arrested." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Mrs. Harper, I'm sorry for what you've been through. The system that's meant to protect vulnerable seniors was weaponized against you. You have full control of your assets and your affairs. If you need any further assistance from this court, don't hesitate to ask." I walked out of that courtroom, a free woman. Susan hugged me. Dorothy cried. We stood on the courthouse steps in the sunshine, and I took my first deep breath in 6 months. The district attorney's office moved quickly. Ethan was arrested 3 days later. The evidence was overwhelming. He eventually pleaded guilty to elder financial abuse, fraud, and exploitation. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and ordered full restitution. His career in finance was over, his reputation destroyed. The greed that drove him to drug and gaslight his own mother cost him everything. Grace called me a week after the sentencing, apologized through tears, said she was horrified by what Ethan had done, that she'd been naive and stupid but never meant for me to be hurt. I listened to her apology. Eventually I told her I forgave her, but I also told her the truth. Our relationship would never be the same. Trust, once shattered this completely, can't be fully repaired. She accepted that. We talk occasionally now, careful conversations that dance around the pain. Her twins are growing up. She sends photos. That's enough for now. I sold my house. Too many bad memories in every room. Bought a smaller condo near Dorothy, bright and modern with big windows and new locks. Got a new doctor I trust. Joined support groups for elder abuse survivors. Started volunteering to help other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial exploitation. I share my story now, tell people what to watch for. Those small signs that seem like care but are actually control. The isolated phone calls that establish patterns. The gentle suggestions that you're declining. The paperwork you don't remember signing. The medications that make you foggy. The gaslighting that makes you doubt your own reality. I tell them to trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The deeper lesson I learned through all this is about power and vulnerability. Being 63 doesn't make me incompetent. Being a widow doesn't make me helpless. Grieving doesn't mean I've lost my mind. The systems meant to protect us can be used against us by people who know how to manipulate them, but we can fight back. We can find allies. We can gather evidence. We can reclaim our lives. The lie that saved my life wasn't just that one night when I told Ethan I was alone when Dorothy was sitting right there. The real lie that saved me was when I stopped believing his lies, when I stopped accepting the narrative that I was confused, declining, unable to trust my own judgment. The moment I trusted myself again, the fog cleared, and I found my way back to my life. I'm 63 years old. I have years ahead of me. I survived losing my husband, then nearly losing myself to my own son's greed. But I'm still here, still strong, still capable. I learned that family isn't always safe, but friendship can be salvation. That lawyers and judges can see truth. That even at rock bottom, when you've lost everything, you can still claw your way back to freedom. I sit in my condo now, on quiet evenings. My phone doesn't ring at 9:30 anymore. There's no surveillance, no control, no lies, just peace. The hard-won peace of a woman who fought for her life and her dignity and won. Sometimes Dorothy calls around that time, asks if I want to meet for coffee the next morning. We chat about nothing important. Garden plans, books we're reading, the weather, normal conversations between friends. That's what caring sounds like. Relaxed, genuine, safe. I sleep peacefully now. And every morning when I wake up in my own home, in control of my own life, I'm grateful. Grateful for Dorothy's friendship. Grateful for Susan's expertise. Grateful for my own stubborn refusal to give up. Grateful that I recognized the truth before it was too late. To anyone listening to this story, I want you to think about the elderly people in your life. Your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors. Are they being controlled or cared for? Is someone asking questions that feel like surveillance? Making them doubt their own judgment? Pushing them toward decisions that benefit someone else? If you see the signs, speak up. Be the ally they need. Be the person who believes them when everyone else says they're confused. And if you're someone going through something similar right now, know this. You're not crazy. You're not imagining things. Trust yourself. Document everything. Find allies. Fight back. You deserve to live your life with dignity and freedom, no matter your age. Have you or someone you love ever experienced financial abuse from family members? How did you recognize the signs? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize what's happening to them. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and strength. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Together, we can help protect vulnerable people from those who would exploit them. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brings awareness, offers comfort to anyone going through something similar, and reminds us all that it's never too late to fight for your life. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and trust yourself. You know your own truth better than anyone else ever could.